Have you ever felt like your prayers don't seem to be heard? That no matter how much you pray, something doesn't seem to work? Imagine that, without realizing it, you may be making mistakes that are keeping you from the graces you seek so much. Now think, what if you discovered what is blocking your prayers and learned how to correct them? This is what we will reveal in this video, based on the teachings of none other than Padre Pio, one of the greatest examples of faith and devotion in the history of the Church. Padre Pio, known for his miracles, his spiritual wisdom, and even for receiving the stigmata of Christ, warned us about the mistakes that many of us make when praying. Simple mistakes, but they can make us feel distant from God, even frustrated in our prayer life. He not only identified these mistakes, but also showed us how to overcome them and transform prayer into a true encounter with the divine. Type, I have faith. Do you want to know what these mistakes are? I'll tell you now. The fourth mistake is the most common and the most dangerous. Most people make it without even realizing it, and it may be the reason why their prayers don't seem to bring peace or answers. But to understand its impact on your life, you need to follow each step of this video, because the first mistakes create the basis for understanding the fourth. And there's more. The fifth mistake is the great test of our faith. Are you going through it without knowing it? By the end of this video, you will have total clarity on how to correct your prayers and achieve a deeper connection with God. And imagine the transformation that a powerful prayer can bring to your life. Inner peace, confidence in difficult times, divine answers. All of this begins by recognizing and eliminating these mistakes. So, if you want to improve your spiritual life and understand how to pray truly effectively, stay with me until the end. Each mistake we're going to discuss can open a new door for your faith, and in the fourth mistake, you will have a revelation that can completely change the way you pray. Are you ready for this transformative encounter? Let's get started. First mistake, praying without attention and heart. Padre Pio emphasized that prayer should be a living and profound dialogue with God, and not a mechanical act, done only out of obligation or habit. One of the most common mistakes is to pray without attention, letting the mind wander to worries, to-do lists, or random thoughts while words are spoken automatically. When we pray without putting our heart into what we are doing, prayer loses its essence, becoming an empty and disconnected act. He said that when praying, one must be fully present, putting soul and intention into each word. For Padre Pio, prayer was an act of love, not a cold ritual. After all, how can we expect God to hear our prayer if we ourselves are not fully attentive to what we are saying? A good starting point to correct this is to take a moment before prayer to quiet the mind and direct the heart. It can be helpful to take a few deep breaths, close your eyes, and block out distractions. Visualizing God's presence before you also helps to bring more meaning to the moment. Have you ever felt lost, not knowing how to deal with life's challenges? Times of financial hardship, family conflicts, or personal crises can seem unbearable when we feel alone. But what if you had a powerful guide by your side? Padre Pio, known for his miraculous blessings and transformative prayers, could be the answer you're looking for. In the ebook, The Power of Padre Pio, you will find specific prayers for each moment of your life: protection for your family, strength on difficult days, guidance in moments of doubt, and much more. Don't let fear, insecurity, or lack of direction continue to dominate your life. Get immediate access to this spiritual guide and transform your reality. Click on the link in the first comment and download the ebook that is already helping thousands of people achieve peace, protection, and spiritual strength. You deserve to live with faith and tranquility. Don't wait, start now. The link to download the ebook is in the first pinned comment. A woman once came to see Padre Pio for advice because she felt her prayers were not being heard. He asked her, "When you talk to your children, you expect them to listen carefully, right? Now think about it. Do you give God that same attention when you pray? After reflecting, she began to focus more on her prayers, and over time, she realized that she felt more peace and a stronger connection with God. Praying attentively is the first step to transforming your spirituality. Remember, God is not looking for perfection in your words, but for sincerity in your heart. Second mistake you can't make: asking without giving thanks. The importance of gratitude in prayer. Padre Pio used to emphasize that one of the biggest mistakes we make in prayer is to focus only on asking, without first acknowledging and thanking the countless blessings we have already received. Prayer that is limited to a wish list can end up feeling like a transactional relationship, as if we were negotiating with God. This type of approach not only weakens our spiritual connection, but also prevents us from perceiving God's presence in our daily lives. Gratitude is essential because it transforms how we see the world. When we give thanks, we stop focusing on what we lack and begin to realize how much we already have. Padre Pio believed that gratitude was the basis of genuine prayer because it opens our hearts to receive more graces. He said, "Those who give thanks multiply their blessings." Think about it. How many times a day do you give thanks for something simple, like your health, your family, or even the fact that you are alive? We are often so focused on our problems that we forget to acknowledge how much God has already done for us. This lack of gratitude can lead us to have a limited view of life, where we only see what we don't have and ignore what we have already received. To correct this mistake, start your prayers with a moment dedicated exclusively to gratitude. Before you ask for anything, think of at least 3 things you are grateful for that day. It could be something small, like a smile you received, or something big, like overcoming a challenge. This not only makes your prayer more meaningful, but it also changes how you approach life's challenges. Imagine a person who lost her job and began praying desperately for a new opportunity. One day, inspired by the teachings of Padre Pio, she decided to change her approach. Instead of just asking, she began to be grateful for the good things she still had: her health, her supportive family, and even the free time to reflect on her life. Soon after, she got an even better job than she had before. She found that by giving thanks, her faith was strengthened and her vision became clearer, allowing her to face the difficult moment with serenity and confidence. Remember, gratitude not only pleases God, it transforms who you are. Third mistake: not trusting God completely. Padre Pio always emphasized that trust is the soul of prayer. Without it, our words become empty and our connection with God weakens. When we pray with doubt in our hearts, it is like planting a seed in dry soil. Prayer loses strength because we do not believe that it will have the power to transform. Many times we ask God to help us with something, but deep down, we are consumed by insecurity, wondering if He will really listen or act on our behalf. This lack of trust is one of the greatest obstacles to a life of prayer. According to Padre Pio, we should approach prayer like a child who trusts his parents completely. Think of a small child who runs into the arms of his mother or father when he is scared. He does not question whether he will be welcomed, he simply believes. This total trust is what God expects of us when we turn to Him. Padre Pio used to say, "Pray, have faith, and do not worry." These words sum up his vision of how we should behave in the face of difficulties. He believed that trusting in God does not mean ignoring problems or pretending that everything is perfect. On the contrary, it means handing over our concerns to Him with the certainty that His will is always for our good, even if we do not immediately understand it. Doubt, on the other hand, is like a shadow that blocks the light of divine grace. When we stop trusting, we begin to take control of situations by our own strength. This leads to spiritual fatigue because we forget that we are not capable of solving everything on our own. Trusting in God means recognizing our limitations and allowing Him to lead us on the right path. To strengthen this trust, an important practice is total surrender. At the end of each prayer, it is essential to say, "Thy will be done." These words, in addition to demonstrating faith, are a way of freeing ourselves from the burden of trying to control everything. It is an act of surrender, an acknowledgement that God knows what is best for us, even when we cannot see it. Another important point is to nourish trust with biblical examples and personal experiences. Remember the times when you asked for something and it was answered, even if it was in a different way than you expected. Every small miracle in your life is a reminder that God is in control and acts at the right time. Padre Pio's story of trust. One of the most remarkable episodes in Padre Pio's life occurred during the Second World War. A group of soldiers were lost in a forest, and faced with imminent danger, one of the men, who was devoted to Padre Pio, prayed for his intercession. He trusted completely in the power of prayer and divine intervention. A short time later, they saw a man dressed as a friar appear in the middle of the forest and point out the way to the exit. When they managed to escape, they reported what had happened and later discovered that the friar described had the same characteristics as Padre Pio, who was in another place at the time. This episode is a powerful example of how trust in prayer can open paths that seem impossible. Like these soldiers, when we trust fully, we allow God to work. Fourth mistake: praying only when you need to. Praying only when you need to is one of the most common and easiest mistakes to make, and Padre Pio talked about it a lot. He reminded us that our relationship with God should not be an occasional exchange, where we seek help only in times of difficulty, but rather an ongoing bond, cultivated with love, dedication, and constancy. When we make prayer an emergency resource, we run the risk of treating God as a first responder, rather than as the center of our lives. Think about your relationship with a dear friend or relative. If you only seek out that person when you are facing a problem or need help, the bond between you weakens over time. It is likely that this person will begin to feel unappreciated as they realize that you are not there for them in their moments of joy, only in their moments of difficulty. The same principle applies to our relationship with God. He wants us to share all aspects of our lives with Him, the good and the bad. Padre Pio said that prayer should be a constant practice and that our relationship with God needs to go beyond a simple request. He believed that when we only approach God in times of adversity, we fail to experience the true richness of spiritual life, intimacy with the Creator. Praying regularly, even in times when everything seems to be going well, is a way to show our gratitude, strengthen our faith, and create a spiritual habit that sustains us through life's ups and downs. Another important point is that when we pray only in times of need, our prayers can be filled with anxiety, despair, or even frustration. This not only impairs the quality of our prayer, but also affects the way we see God. By cultivating a life of continuous prayer, we can maintain serenity even in the midst of difficulties, because our trust in God is already deeply rooted. Padre Pio also teaches us that daily prayer is a way of making room for God in our routine. This can be done in small gestures, such as a prayer of thanksgiving upon waking, a moment of reflection before meals, or even a silent prayer during a walk. These simple acts help to create a constant relationship with God and remind us of His presence at all times. Padre Pio often told the story of a young woman he was mentoring spiritually. She was a pious person, but she confessed that she only prayed fervently when she was facing difficulties. Padre Pio advised her to change her approach, asking her to begin praying every day, even when she was happy or carefree. Over time, this practice completely transformed her life. When she faced a serious illness years later, she was able to maintain her serenity and faith because her relationship with God was already deeply rooted. She said that praying every day, in good times and bad, gave her the strength she needed to endure challenges with confidence and peace of heart. Like this young woman, we can transform our spiritual lives by making prayer a constant practice. Don't wait for the moment of need to connect with God. Seek Him always, and He will be your strength in every situation. Fifth error: praying without humility. One of the most harmful errors that Padre Pio highlighted in relation to prayer is the lack of humility. Many times we approach God with a proud or demanding attitude, as if He were obliged to grant our requests exactly as we wish. This attitude not only weakens our prayer, but also distances us from the true essence of spirituality. Padre Pio said that humility is the basis of all sincere and effective prayer. According to him, prayer should be an expression of total dependence on God, recognizing our fragility and divine greatness. When we place ourselves before God with humility, we open our hearts so that He can carry out His will in our lives, which is often much greater and better than we imagine. Pride as a barrier to grace. A lack of humility can manifest itself in many ways in prayer. It can be the insistence on wanting something at any cost, without reflecting on whether it is truly the best for us. It can also be the attitude of negotiating with God, as if our actions or merits gave us the right to demand something in return. Padre Pio warned that this attitude creates a barrier between us and God, as it transforms prayer into an act of selfishness instead of an encounter of love and trust. He taught that when we turn to God, we need to recognize that everything we have and are comes from Him. Even the ability to pray is a grace that He grants us. Humility is, therefore, the key to truly connecting with the Lord and receiving His graces. How to cultivate humility in prayer? Cultivating humility requires practice and constant inner review. Here are some practical tips. Recognize your limitations. Before you begin to pray, remember that you do not control everything in your life. Acknowledge your faults, weaknesses, and dependence on God. Accept God's will. When making a request, keep in mind that God knows what is best for you. Say something like, "Lord, let your will be done, not mine." This demonstrates trust and submission to God's plan. Ask for forgiveness. Begin your prayers by asking for forgiveness for your mistakes. This practice not only purifies your heart, but also reflects an acknowledgement of your human condition. Avoid comparisons. Don't look at others thinking that you deserve more or less than they do. God works in unique ways in each person's life, and comparisons can lead to envy or discouragement. Real-life example: Padre Pio's humility. One of Padre Pio's most striking stories about humility involves his attitude toward the extraordinary graces he received, such as the stigmata. Despite being admired by thousands of people and considered a saint while he was still alive, he never boasted or used these gifts to exalt himself. On the contrary, Padre Pio often said that he was just a poor friar who prays, and that everything he did was God's work, not his. Once, a man came to him to ask for a blessing, and upon seeing the stigmata asked, "Father, how can you bear such painful marks?" Padre Pio replied, "I do not bear them. It is God who bears them for me." This answer demonstrates the depth of his humility. He knew that any good thing he did or any grace he received. We have reached the end of this video, but this is only the beginning of a transformation in your prayer life. Knowing the 5 errors that Padre Pio warned us about is the first step to deepening your relationship with God. Prayer is a direct bridge to the divine, but for it to truly connect us, we need to pray with an open heart, a present mind, and a humble spirit. Let's briefly recap. Being attentive and present, giving thanks before asking, trusting God completely, praying consistently, and cultivating humility are the pillars that make prayer more effective and meaningful. Now imagine how your life could change by correcting these errors. Think of a more serene prayer, one that is not just an act of asking, but an intimate moment of dialogue with God. A prayer in which you truly feel the divine presence at your side, guiding your steps and calming your heart. It is not just a religious practice, but a spiritual refuge, a space where your concerns are confidently surrendered and your spirit is strengthened by faith. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever made any of these mistakes? Maybe you have prayed in a hurry, distractedly, or only when something was going wrong. That's okay. Today, you have the opportunity to change that. From now on, make prayer a daily, constant, and profound habit. Be more thankful, trust fully, and above all, pray with humility, as Padre Pio taught. If this content made sense to you, share this video with someone who may be facing difficulties in their prayer life. Sometimes, a message like this is what a person needs to completely transform their relationship with God. And remember to subscribe to the channel to receive more reflections and inspiring teachings. Leave in the comments which of these mistakes you most identify with and what change you intend to make starting today. Your experience can inspire others who are seeking to grow in faith. Let's build a stronger prayer community together, supported by the teachings of great saints like Padre Pio. And remember, pray, have faith, and don't worry. May these words echo in your mind every time you bend your knees to pray. See you in the next video.